My name is Mike Foster, the Entrepreneur's Mentor, and welcome to my interview series, A Zoom With. Now, I regularly share my thoughts via my video snippets on my YouTube channel, but this series of interviews is to introduce you to trusted experts with a view to them sharing their thoughts, their tips, their experience. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Val King of BFG Associates. Val helps businesses to navigate the process to employee ownership, and I look forward to exploring this topic with her. Welcome, Val.
Good afternoon, Mike.
Thanks for joining me. Firstly, can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and perhaps your background?
Certainly. So we sold our business, the Roof Light Company, which is a manufacturing business with 70 employees, in 2019 to employees via an EOT, an employee ownership trust. And then just 1 week before lockdown last year, I handed over the role of managing director. And so I'd been managing director of the Roof Light Company for about 20 years. And before that, I'd been in the corporate world. So I went from big corporate to SME, and I have to say I feel much more comfortable in the SME space.
Great, thank you for that introduction. So I guess around employee owned, it's a newish phrase, I think, to business. What motivated you to become employee owned as a business?
So we had three reasons, in fact, and just to give you a bit of background, we were approached by a competitor for a trade sale. When we were looking at exiting, there are obviously the normal options: MBO, trade sale, or passing on to family. And so passing on to family wasn't an option. None of our children were interested, and so MBO there wasn't really an appetite, and we felt that a better option would be employee ownership. But one thing that helped to really cement that desire to sell to employees was the fact that when we were approached by the competitor, we knew that the employees would actually suffer as a result, that they might end up not having a job within a year, because a lot of the production would have gone to Poland. And we also knew that our legacy, which is values-led culture, innovation, and long-term sustainability, would actually have been lost. So I think at that very point, we thought actually employee ownership is really the only solution if we want to pass on a legacy and secure the employment of our employees. So that was really why.
Thank you. And it's certainly something I've seen in the past where people think the only option they have available to them is the trade sale. And I've seen a couple of businesses suffer exactly the same way, whereby they thought their employees were going to be looked after. Great that you had the hindsight to sort of explore that and see that actually it wasn't going to be the case, because I've seen it sort of evolve that way not to be so. Mm-hmm. But if a business is thinking about the process of transitioning, how does the transaction work? What does that look like?
So there are three main models of employee ownership. The one that people will probably be most familiar with is the John Lewis model, which was set up in the 1920s. So that's where 100% of the business is owned by a trust. So no individuals actually own shares. The second model is where there's direct ownership. So like a shareholding company, the employees actually own the shares directly. That's the least common option. The one that we went for is the hybrid model. So we sold 60% of our shares to an employee ownership trust. And the big advantage for that, and you're an accountant as a background, aren't you, Mike? So the big advantage of that is that you don't pay capital gains tax. And so that is a significant tax advantage. But if you're doing it just to save tax, then it's never going to work. You need to do it because you really want to have something for the future and something where the employees are really engaged in the business.
Yeah, and I like what you just said there in terms of if it's just about the tax, it's not necessarily going to work. And actually, I don't think enough businesses know about the tax that you've just mentioned there. So that's really good to share. I used to always encourage when I was working for firms or accountants is to try and get all the stakeholders around the table at the same time, whether that was the legal people, the accountant, the business owners, maybe the employee representatives, just to consider the big picture. So rather than going down one route that might be appropriate for one area, bringing the whole blended piece together.
Exactly. And so in fact, what I want to share is that's what I'm doing with my new business, BFG Associates. BFG stands for Businesses Force for Good. And what I can offer to exiting business owners is to give them the chance to actually express what they really want, because sometimes when it's going around in your head, it's not just the numbers, it's the emotional feel of what is it going to be like to sell the business, what am I going to do after that, and what really is important to me. And I think that when you're actually going through it, there's some people who actually avoid the decision and wait till you could argue too late, or they don't face up to the different options that are available. And I think sometimes, if I might say, accountants aren't putting that option, the EO option, on the table. So as a member of the Employee Ownership Association Membership Council, I'm an advocate of employee ownership, and I really want accountants to get a bit more genned up on what employee ownership and the employee ownership trust model looks like.
Well, you're certainly an advocate, and you've been and done it. So you can't get a better advocate that's been through the journey, experienced it, and still an advocate of that. So
Yeah.
it's fantastic. And one of the things I quite liked what you were saying earlier actually was around leaving a legacy, because I don't think many because many business owners think the only real option for them is perhaps a trade sale. They don't think about the other things that they want to get from selling their business other than just the money. So thank you for highlighting those. You also spoke about the employees. But how did the employees react when you announced that was the route that you were considering or you'd gone down?
So what we did was to choreograph in many ways the actual communication. And it's really important that you don't just run into work and say, okay guys, you're going to become employee owned. And we were told this by many people who had learned the lesson, and I learned quite a few times from examples of companies where it hadn't landed well. And I thought, employee ownership, what's not to like? But the problem is, if you don't communicate it clearly and say, well, what's going to happen in the future, then there's a potential for miscommunication, lack of clarity, and people are not happy. So we told our directors first, then managers, then on the 23rd of January 2019, we told the rest of the employees. And what we did was to actually formulate a bunch of FAQs that they could then relate to and ask. And basically we just said to them, ask us anything you want. We'll tell you as honestly as we can. And if we don't know, we'll get back to you when we can. And I think that transparency is really important. We gave them all the data, and then at about a few months after the deal was done, we actually shared the valuation and the whole of the aspects of the deal. So they were delighted, in answer to your question.
Fantastic. And I love the transparency. I think that's fantastic. We've spoken offline about the benefits of employee ownership. So could you just share those with me again in terms of what are those benefits that companies could experience?
So the main benefits are, from the exiting business owner's point of view, I would say passing on legacy, being in control of the deal, because when you're doing a trade sale, if you've been involved in this, Mike, then you never really know what's going to happen. You never know what kind of earnouts are going to be required until the deal is done. So you're in control of the deal because you're a willing seller to a willing buyer. And so that's really important. From the point of view of employees, there's a much higher sense of engagement. So you can imagine, if they have a stake in the business, they are much more likely to be engaged. And engagement is a word that's bandied around the whole time in business. But with what we have in the Rooflight company, and this is pretty common, in fact, most common in EO businesses, we have a representative body called the Voice Group, who represents the wishes and desires of the people they represent. And then we have 2 employees on the board of trustees. And they are actually employee directors. And so it's their job to hold the top team accountable. And so that means that there's a greater say in the business by employees, and they are therefore much more involved in the business and in the key decision making, which is overall good. So basically, you get a meaningful level of engagement.
Right. And I'm glad you mentioned earnouts, because it's the thing that sends a shiver down my spine when people talk about earnouts. I remember having a conversation with an accountant once whereby they said to me, "Oh, I don't know why people are going for earnouts," and it seemed to be contradictory advice, because they would advise in a business that was in effect buying or selling, earnouts or not earnouts, and I just the consistency wasn't always there. But I love the benefits of this employee ownership, and I'm sure it'd be right for many businesses. So I guess we should ask, how's the Rooflight company doing now since the employee ownership scheme took place?
So I have to say it's doing really well. We had a good succession plan. We also we ran a recruitment and selection process with external candidates as well as the one very strong internal candidate who is a guy called Steve Webber, who was our operations director. And Steve in the end did get the job, but through merit. And we had 318 applications for my job, which is a huge amount. And what we felt through that process was that Steve really earned his position, and he's done exceedingly well. And what was really great is that Steve, with his operations hat on, has been able to deliver very successful processes during COVID. And I have to admit that he's doing a better job than me, I'm sure, that during COVID. So, and sometimes it's, I've had to sort of give my ego a bit of a talking to in the last year or so. And but the good news is it's doing really well. Sales are going well. People are engaged. I'm in communication with people because I'm now a trustee. And I can see that there's a strain in some people, for example, that, the people who are working in production, you can see that, it's not been easy, and it's not as if it's all, all wonderful. But that really is down to COVID. It's not down to the business, the way the business is run. So I couldn't be more happy for people in the business that now that things are starting to get a bit more easy. There's really a really high level of engagement.
Fantastic. And great news that you had succession planning in mind already. You went through a competitive process. Steve still won out on the role, and I guess from a COVID perspective, that was quite useful in the end, because I guess anybody being dropped into that position, it might have been a bit of a headache for them trying to get a feel of a business that's changing overnight.
Talking about, we were really lucky, because there were two good candidates. One who had a lot of experience in the window business, but it would have been really tough for him to jump into that chair and lead the business. And because operationally things needed to be really well delivered, it was the right choice. So I was very, very pleased that that's the way it went.
Excellent. Well, in summary of everything you shared with us today, I think it seems like a right choice all the way around. Steve's role, your option to go the route that you did, and how the employee team are now engaging and taking the business forward, and keeping your legacy alive. So fantastic news.
Yeah.
Thank you, Val.
Yeah, I've got to say that if for me, in hindsight, I wouldn't change anything, and I think there might be a lot of people who exit their business who couldn't say exactly the same.
It's a great advocate in itself. So thank you, Val. Thanks for spending some time with me to share some knowledge and expertise around employee ownership. If people want to engage your expertise and grab your thoughts a bit further, how would they contact you?
So my website is BFG Associates, and if they search that, or Val King on LinkedIn. So
Lovely.
That's how they can do it.
Super. Thank you again, Val. Thanks again for joining.
Thanks, Mike.
So thank you for joining me for my latest A Zoom With interview. Please tune in and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And the next time I have a Zoom With, you'll be the first to know.